this.
Okay. Welcome to our Tuesday, May 6th Planning Commission meeting. I now call the meeting to order. Daisy, can you confirm that the Kansas Open Meeting Act required notice has been properly provided?
Yes, I can confirm the packet was posted and the required notice was provided.
Thank you, Daisy. Roll call, please.
We'll proceed with roll call. Commissioner Sydow.
Here.
Commissioner Vancouver.
Here.
Commissioner Alt.
Here.
Commissioner Farber.
Here.
Commissioner Rogers. Commissioner Paget.
Here.
Commissioner Mike Sell.
Here.
Chair Waters.
Here.
So we have 7 of the 8 appointed members. That constitutes a quorum, and we've provided notice of today's meeting, so we can proceed with today's meeting agenda.
Okay. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes of the April 15th meeting? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve.
Make the motion, we approve. Second.
Moved and second to approve the minutes of the April 15th meeting. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. All right, we will move into new business. That's okay.
So we have 3 items for you this afternoon. 2 of them are public hearing items that would be quasi-judicial in terms of their hearing, but they're both legislative matters. And then the 3rd item is an administrative matter that is just not involving a public hearing. So the first application is a text amendment application filed by Jeff Mays on behalf of H&M Investments, LLC, and Riffle Development Company, Incorporated. And the request is approval of a text amendment to the South 9th Street Corridor Overlay District regulations. And the request is to add auto body and collision repair with screened outdoor storage to the list of conditional uses that are allowed. And so this section that's on the screen, the text that's in black are uses that are currently allowed as conditional uses in the South 9th Corridor Overlay District. And item 2 there in red is the text or the use that's proposed to be added. And so the South 9th Corridor Overlay is an overlay district that starts about a quarter mile south of Schilling and runs about a quarter mile south of Waterwell Road, and it runs along the South 9th Street corridor. Actually includes both sides, city and county. And at the south end, directly across from the Kubota plant, is a subdivision called Lakeside Edition, and it has a motel that occupies 1 lot. And there's a 2nd lot owned by H&M Investments, LLC, and that's currently vacant. And then there's a subdivision also in the corridor known as Riffle Edition number 2, and that is features a loop street called Todd Circle. And the only use that's been developed in that subdivision to date is the Hilton Garden Inn and Conference Center. And so on the aerial photo that Dustin has up, at the south end of the subdivision is the Hilton Garden Inn and Conference Center. And then there's a looped street in there called Todd Circle. And the rest of the subdivision is undeveloped, and that is owned by Riffle Development Company. And so Mr. Mays is a commercial realtor who represents H&M Investments and also Riffle Development Company. And he has received interest from several auto body collision repair businesses that are interested in locating a business establishment in Salina. And 2 of those businesses have focused in on locations that are in the Lakeside Edition and Riffle Edition number 2. Those are both zone Plan C5, but they're also both located in the corridor overlay district. And so these 2 subdivisions have been relatively slow to build out, and there's been a lot of changes in the commercial real estate market, as you have observed there's not a lot of brand-new retail construction that's going on. And so to provide more flexibility to accommodate commercial businesses looking for locations along commercial corridors, the applicant's requesting that the list of uses be expanded to include auto body collision repair. And so just by way of reference, if you're in a regular C5 zoning district, such as along Broadway Boulevard, you can apply to the Planning Commission for a conditional use permit, and you would look at the location and plan and decide if that was a good location and plan for auto body repair. Presently, that is not included in the overlay district. And so what the request is today is to be able to add that so that an application could be filed, and then the Planning Commission would still decide whether that was a suitable location or a suitable plan for that location. And so conditional use permits are approved on a case-by-case, location-by-location basis. And so the overlay district dates back from the late 1990s, and it was put in place because this was considered to be an important gateway into the community, and the Planning Commission, both county and city, and the city and county commissions wanted to have an overview of new development in the area, and they didn't want big box retailers going farther south all the way towards Waterwell, so they put this overlay district in place. And so there's not a long list of permitted uses. There's a modest list of commercial uses. It's much shorter than the list in a standard C5 district. So the request is to add this auto body repair as a conditional use, and that would mean that any body shop that came forward would still have to be reviewed and approved by the Planning Commission as an individual application. And so as a staff, I think we're supportive of this approach because it does allow you to review a specific plan and look to the plan and the requested use and what is around it and make a determination whether that use fits. And so one of the primary concerns of about the use or perceptions about the use of auto body shop is the perception that it can sometimes lead to unsightly outdoor storage of vehicles that are awaiting repair, which many times in many locations are not screened from view. But in the overlay district, there's a requirement that all materials, supplies, equipment shall be stored in an enclosed building or located in a side or rear yard and screened from visibility. So what this would mean is if there is an auto-related use, that vehicles awaiting repair would have to be parked or stored behind a screening fence of some kind. And as a conditional use, you would be looking at whether you think that screening is well located or effective. And so your options this afternoon would be to recommend that this additional use be added to the corridor overlay district, or you could recommend that it be added but delete the reference to allow any sort of outdoor storage, or you could postpone consideration of this item if you think you need staff or the applicant to provide you with more information to reach a decision, or you could recommend that the status quo be maintained and that auto body repair not be added to the list of uses in the South 9th corridor. So with that, we'd be open to any questions, but the question before the body is just whether you want to add line item 2 there to the list of conditional uses and allow an additional use to be applied for within the district. And we did point out that in 2022, Mr. Augustine came before you and requested that a number of uses be added, including mini warehouses, and he has since built his mini warehouse facility on South 9th within the corridor overlay. So with that, we'd be open to any questions you might have.
Okay, thank you, Dean. Commissioners, do you have any questions of staff?
I do, Dean. Just for clarification, so one of the permitted uses is automobile service. So does the planning department consider body shop different than automobile service?
Right. So an automobile service would be something like Discount Tire. Discount Tire does things like tires, brakes, things like that. But if you're doing things like body work, frame straightening, replacing transmissions, things like that, that's considered automobile repair and not service. So in the C5 zoning district, you can do automobile service as a permitted use, but automobile repair is a conditional use. And the difference is that automotive repair usually has much more about inoperable vehicles, parts of vehicles that are disassembled, and so there's a lot more outdoor but storage of vehicles awaiting repair in the automobile repair operation than in a service operation. So in a service operation, you're usually in the bay for something that's a short duration, like changing tires or working on brakes, and then it is back out. So Discount Tire, that would be considered automobile service, but automobile repair is when you get into frame straightening, body dent repair, collision repair, that type of operation.
So we're change of transmission, where would that fall?
Automobile repair,
Repair.
Which is what we're discussing.
yes.
Would we be ahead to expand that line number 2? And I don't have my screen up right now. And just call it auto repair. And I'm going to throw that at Mr. Mays too. The kind of inquiries you're getting on this property. I mean, if we expanded this and made this a little more clear so that you could get this property out to somebody and get it as a viable, would that be helpful?
Yes, please.
Yeah, sure. We've done this so many times, I feel informal.
I understand, but I also know the rules, and I know how
Yeah.
he gets on me all the time.
Yeah.
Jeff Mace, 157 South 7, Compro Realty. Interestingly, on the Riffle edition, we have got a automobile service group that will be coming for you in the plan for the planned portion of the C5 that's going as well. So they're a permitted use. They're just going to have to come before you with their site plan to get approval for site plan and materials. So on the Riffle edition, it's also interesting if you look at the lot. Yes, to answer your question. If you look at the lot, it's abnormally shaped. It's got the back of Tractor Supply to the north of it. We've got the detention basin to the west of it. And given the abnormal shape, I'm not real sure what we do with it if we don't do something down this path because of the way it sits in there. So it was one of those places that I was touting to these folks. I don't know what happened, but we got bum rush with auto collision repair folks all within like a month. We had like 6 inquiries. Got to come to Salina. I have no idea, but so. Maybe, and I'll certainly defer to staff, but I can tell you in both of these instances, one of them, the building's on its way coming. If they don't, they're both groups that have multiple locations in other areas. If for some reason something goes haywire in Salina, they'll divert the building. But these aren't, hey, if we can get this done, maybe we'll go do it. I mean, these are projects that are going to be realized, if that's helpful at all. I can tell you on behalf of both the applicants, we've been through the DRT meeting, have kind of got our minds wrapped around it with staff as far as material, what the building's going to look like, screening. I believe we've satisfied staff's expectations in those regards. If you look at a lot of the other markets, larger markets, you see this type of service locating in that higher impact retail rather than being tucked away in the industrial, underneath the viaduct kind of thing that we're used to around here. It's unusual for us to see this type of service, but if you look around next time when you're in Wichita, you're going to see it. You just don't necessarily recognize it right now. So it's not atypical what we see in other markets. So to answer your question, I would say yes, but I would certainly defer to staff's lecture lead there. Thank you.
Thank you.
We
All right.
have the definitions, just if it's helpful to pull up on the screen. I'll try to zoom it up a little bit. So this is automobile repair. It is the repair, rebuilding, or reconditioning of motor vehicles or parts thereof, including such major repairs as spray, painting, body, fender, transmission, differential, axle, spring, and frame repairs, repair of radiators requiring removal thereof, and major overhauling of engines. So that's your automotive repair definition. And then we have our service definition, which is stores engaged primarily in the business of selling and installing tires, batteries, and other automobile parts and accessories. Automobile service includes the lubrication of automobiles and the replacement of minor parts, but does not include major repair work such as motor replacement, body and fender repair, or spray painting. So those are the two definitions that kind of differentiate between automobile service and automobile repair.
And is there a definition for the proposed line item, or is that a brand new subdivision that we're talking about, the auto body and collision repair?
It's just a subgroup. It's a subgroup of the broader definition of auto repair.
Sure.
But it was based on the specific request of the individual users that have expressed interest in locating within the overlay district. And to date, all the ones that we have talked to would fit within the definition of auto body and collision repair. But if you so chose, you could substitute the term automobile repair, but we would still recommend that you include the language about including screened outdoor storage, so that part is clear.
Well, that makes sense to me. I mean, just from a standpoint of potential users, I mean, it would certainly make coming before this board and making another application unnecessary, and maybe it makes it easier for you guys as well. I don't know, but
It just means that if you had a specific automobile or vehicle transmission repair business or something that was exclusively radiator repair, which is not as common, that they would be able to come forward with an application in addition to just auto body and collision repair. That would be the difference.
Okay.
All right, is there any other questions of staff? If not, I'd open it up for discussion or a motion. Dustin,
Yeah, I don't believe we have anyone in the room other than Mr. Mays, and I think everyone online is with an applicant for one of the agenda items. At least I don't see anybody reaching out to comment on this.
Okay, thank you.
well, that being said, I think that this seems kind of natural to open it to all automotive instead of narrowing it that addition down to auto body, just to auto repair, unless staff thinks differently. I think that seems kind of natural.
I agree, and I appreciate the forward-thinking, Commissioner, of looking ahead in the future for this as well. And I like that thinking. I appreciate that input. That's great. I'd love to hear a motion about that as well.
So all that would mean is that if you look at, on page 4, if you look at alternative 1, that alternative 1 could be amended to approve the addition of automobile repair, including screened outdoor storage areas, as opposed to the auto body collision repair, so that it would just be automobile repair to be consistent with the term that's defined in the zoning ordinance. So it would just be substituting the term automobile repair for auto body collision repair.
Well, I would make that motion with that change.
Second.
It has been moved and second to approve this amendment using the term auto repair in place of what is in our documents. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, we'll move into application Z 25-3.
Could I clarify one thing? That was with the
That's
screening.
with the, yeah, we were
Yeah.
gonna clarify, that is
Okay.
that is auto repair, not auto collision, just auto repair with the screening.
Yes.
Yeah, got it.
That's what my intention was.
And so then in the future, if somebody were doing this in a, do what?
The term is
Automobile repair, apologies. But in the future, they would bring a conditional use permit application and a site. If it was a planned commercial district, they would have a planned development district as well, so.
Yep. Yep. Very good. Thank you.
So item 3.2 is also a text amendment, and we have provided quite a bit of background, but the use of and the term temporary uses is much older and has been in use much longer than the term special event permit. And there are some overlaps, and then there are things that are different. But the primary purpose of the adoption of what we would call temporary use regulations or temporary use permits, it's for uses that are primarily outdoors or they're primarily mobile, and they don't involve a use that has a permanent building. And they're not nearly as prevalent as they used to be, but it was not uncommon for somebody to set up and on a weekend or 3-day weekend and set up and sell car stereos in a parking lot at the corner of Crawford and Ohio, or the guy who liked to sell Elvis paintings and set up in the corner and sell for three days on a weekend. And then we also have things like mobile food trucks and other food vendors, and so the temporary use regulations were designed to address that. And we got into things where there was a period of time where we had a number of flea markets, and some of the flea markets were causing lots of problems for their neighbors because they didn't make provision for parking for their vendors or customers, or they were setting up on property for which they had not obtained permission to set up on. And so that was the temporary use was designed to do that. And then in 2003, the Planning Commission decided that those types of open air markets should be reviewed by the Planning Commission ahead of time with notice provided ahead of time to neighboring property owners. And so then we went from flea markets, where we started seeing different types of open air markets and more farmers markets. And so the classic example is Stutzman's Garden Center that set up at Cloud and 9th Street. And what was unusual about them compared to some place like Waters Hardware or Lowe's or places like that is that Stutzman's doesn't have a permanent building, and it's not a permanent presence. And so they have different things that apply. And so what was set up was that the Planning Commission do the initial review and approve the plan and location. And if you followed that plan in the same location, then staff would just renew your permit seasonally every year. And we did that with Sedgman's for 14 years. And then they decided they needed to relocate to the Central Mall, and you approved that new location for them. And if they continue to operate there year after year, that would be a staff function to approve their plan. And then 2016, there was an amendment. There was interest in allowing farmers markets in neighborhoods and church parking lots. And so you approved a change to allow that. And then the one that had maybe the biggest impact on the community was the legalization of consumer fireworks. And so in late June, early July, you'll see the tents popping up at different locations around the community to set up and sell consumer fireworks. And those are done through a temporary use permit. And in 2011, the Planning Commission recommended a set of regulations for how big they can be, where they have to locate, how far they have to be from other properties, those types of things. And we carry that out each year administratively, and we have 8 to 10 of those. And then we have a different category of outdoor events that are often things like community events and festivals, parades, fun runs, things like that. And we didn't have a very good handle for those, so we started issuing special event permits for those and working with the event organizers, because many times special events require services from the city. They need barricades, they need traffic control, they want bleachers for some, they're having a concert or music and they want bleachers for people to sit on. Well, without the special event permit, that really facilitated communication, and we didn't always have a means to communicate that, oh, you were expecting us to provide this service for you. This is our planned dates, and it doesn't conflict with any other events. And then finally, with interest with the streetscape project and increased interest downtown, we created the Downtown Arts, Commerce, and Entertainment District. So there are a lot of these things overlap, and one of the goals of this amendment process is that we have, when we were working on the ACE District and special events, we were going through and seeing what overlapping codes that we had where we might require 2 different approvals or 2 different permits for the same thing. And so we've eliminated a number of those, but what we haven't eliminated is things that are in Chapter 42, the zoning code relating to temporary uses that overlap with things that are in the special event ordinance, or they're in the Downtown Arts, Commerce, and Entertainment District. And so starting on page 8 and 9, the list is not too lengthy, but one of the things that we're proposing from a temporary use standpoint is to, the list starts out with Christmas tree sales lots, and I can say, and it might be 30 years, not 25, but I don't think the city of Salina has issued a temporary use permit for. So I can recall when at the Dillon's Superstore, somebody would come in November and they'd fence off a third of the parking lot and put up a fence and have a large area where they'd set up a Christmas tree lot in the parking lot. Well, that simply doesn't happen anymore, so it doesn't seem any point having that in there anymore. And then we have a term in the temporary use regulations that say that you need a temporary use permit to have a festival. Well, we're not issuing temporary use permits for the Smoky Hill River Festival, but we still would issue permits for, if you had a tent put up for religious or civic group or fraternal organization gathering. And so we would not do that or require it if that was inside the ACE district. And the same would be that we would retain the category of carnivals and circuses and tent shows if you're located on private property that do not require support services from the city. So I'll try to give you an example, and most of this is not something that it's more of a direct concern to staff and how we interact with the public than it necessarily would be with the Planning Commission. But over here to the east is the City Lights stage and parking lot. Somebody wants to reserve that stage and parking lot and have a concert there, which there was one on Sunday. And so in order to do that, since it's city-owned and it's city property, they have to get a special event permit and have that approved by the city. And the city may have to provide services. They may have to turn on electricity. They may have to go up over and set things up, so you coordinate that with the city. The flip side of that would be every September or early October, Long MacArthur Ford moves all the vehicles off one of their sales lots, and they set up bleachers, and they have a country western concert in their parking lot. That's all on private property, and it does not require support services from the city. So that is a temporary use, and we issue a temporary use permit for that every year. But what we're trying to avoid is having a situation where you are having a concert on the City Light stage and you have to get both a special event permit and a temporary use permit. So we're trying to go through and say, if you're on a public parking lot that's located in the ACE district, you're not subject to having to get a temporary use permit. And so the same would be for a farmer's market or anything similar, again, distinguishing between a public parking lot downtown and somewhere else. And then the same thing where we're trying to create an exception for mobile food vendors who are in the ACE district. There is a separate process for that. And so if you set up and sell as a food truck in the downtown area, you have to get a downtown food truck permit, or what we call an activity permit. But if you are a food vendor and you set up Thursday noons in a parking lot on South Ohio Street, you're not in the Arts, Commerce, and Entertainment District. So as long as you have your food truck and you are set up in that lot for less than a full day, you do not need a permit for that. But if you were going to set up in the Dillon's parking lot and sell barbecue for 10 days, then you would. But as long as you're less than a full day, you don't need a permit. And then the final item, we had a section that was all designed to allow for sidewalk sales downtown, where they would go in and close Santa Fe and put barricades on it, and people would move their merchandise out into the street. And that hasn't happened since, I believe, 2007. So, and we have a provision that allows merchants downtown to put merchandise out on a sidewalk in front of their business through a ACE district permit. So we have just been asked to go through there and work with the Planning Commission to go through and just eliminate anything that would have double permit requirements, and so that the temporary use permit is for private property that's outside the ACE district. And then the other one, which is kind of interesting, is that in the Central Business District, all business, sales, service, and display has to take place inside the four walls of a building. Well, we have encouraged and allowed a number of activities which conflict with that, including sidewalk dining areas and the addition of outdoor merchandise areas. So I think, Dustin, if you keep going to the use limitations on this, I think is that in a separate attachment, or is that? Okay, so if that might be it. So, okay. So we have language that says all business storage and display of goods should be conducted in an enclosed building. We already have an exception for an outdoor patio. So at the alley, their patio is on their own private property. The Paramount has a patio behind their business. It's on private property. And so that's allowed under A there. And then we have allowed places that are retail to have an outdoor merchandise areas on the sidewalk, or if you're Seraphin Bread and you want to put some tables and chairs out during the day in front of your business, you can do that and take them back in at night. And then C there is for the formal sidewalk dining area. And just the Planning Commission hasn't been as directly involved in that, but just it can be confusing, but just so people can understand, if you're Seraphin Bread and you put some tables and chairs out and you just have it there during the day, that's fine. But what you cannot do is serve any kind of alcoholic beverages. So the state of Kansas requires that if you're an establishment that wants to have a sidewalk area where you serve alcoholic beverages, then you have to essentially create a fenced-in area and create a permanent sidewalk dining area. So if you see Blue Sky, if you see Martinelli's, Yaya's, those are considered to be sidewalk dining areas, and those require a specific sidewalk cafe license agreement. And so we have a number of those downtown. And the difference is, if you have a sidewalk cafe license agreement, you're allowed to extend your drinking establishment presence out to the sidewalk. Whereas if you don't have that and you're just putting some tables and chairs out during the day, you can't serve alcohol in that area. You can serve food, but not alcoholic beverages. So that's a whole lot of complexity. Most of it is administered by staff, but what we've been asked to work with the Planning Commission to do is to go through the zoning code and make sure that the zoning code lines up with what's been done with the special event ordinance and the arts, commerce, and entertainment ordinance, and make sure that people who are doing things on public parking lots downtown don't have to go multiple places or get multiple permits. So that's the thought behind this. And so it's basically a set of text amendments that we've gone through and put together, and your options this afternoon would be to recommend approval of that set of text amendments to eliminate conflicts and duplication, or you could approve the set of text amendments with any revisions, additions, or deletions you think are appropriate, or you could say we need additional information before we feel comfortable making a recommendation, or you could maintain the status quo and make no recommended changes at this time. But we've just tried to go through this line by line, section by section, and make sure that the special event ordinance, the ACE district ordinance, and the temporary use regulations do not conflict with each other. So
Okay. Thank you, Dean. Are there any questions of staff?
Yeah, I had a question. I just wanted to clarify, is for the food trucks rule on not requiring a permit for a full day, is that applicable to just the ACE district or is that the whole city?
The ACE district, if you want to set up even on private property or on public property, there are painted, marked spaces and several on-street stalls and locations in the downtown, and then there are some marked out food truck stalls in public parking lots. And in order to set up and sell in those, you have to have a food truck permit and be registered with the city and have your food truck inspected and checked for fire extinguishers and things like that. If you set up on a private parking lot downtown, there are not many, but over at the Yard baseball practice facility, they have a private lot, and they've had a food truck over there a couple times, and they have to get a food truck permit to set up and sell in the ACE district. And if you are outside the ACE district and you want to set up and sell at a parking lot on South Ohio Street and you have the owner's permission and you just set up at 10 a.m. and drive off at 2:30 p.m., you do not need a temporary use permit or any other type of food truck permit.
Got it. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions of staff?
I have a question. I believe there needs to be a comma added for letter Q, talking about tents for religious, civic group, or fraternal organization, unless it is specifically talking about religious civic groups.
No, that's an error. We will typographical error. We'll get that corrected, but that would be correct. There would be tents for religious, comma, civic group, comma, or fraternal organization gatherings.
All right. Any other questions of staff? Okay, I bring it back to the commission for discussion or a motion.
I can confirm that we don't have anyone in the room from the public, and everyone online are individuals representing the upcoming case.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, and Mr. Hanson as well, not to dismiss him.
So this can be broken apart, but for simplicity's sake, one of the options we gave was to recommend approval of the set of text amendments that we have put forward. And so if the motion was to recommend approval of the set of text amendments, and that would summarize all those that we've put forward, and you wouldn't have to recite anything individually unless you want to do what, as Mr. Farber pointed out, a typographical error or something that you see that's an error that needs to be corrected.
All right. Do I hear a motion?
I'd move that we approve application Z 25-3 with the set of text amendments as proposed and presented with the corrections.
I'll second that.
Been moved and second to approve application Z25-3 with the set of text amendments as proposed and presented. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, we'll move to administrative items, application Z98-81.
So this is not a public hearing item, meaning that we have not sent out notice advertising this as a public hearing, because the public hearing occurred when the zoning was established for this property. But this is a proposed final site plan for an outlot in what is known as the Auburndale addition, which for most people would be referred to the development where Lowe's is located, and Mr. Hers will have a report for you on the use and the proposed site plan.
So the location of the proposed Valvoline Auto Center is the vacant lot directly south of Dimeru and north of the Holiday Inn. I'll start over. Thank you, Daisy. The location of the proposed Valvoline store is the vacant lot south of Dimeru, along the east side of South 9th Street and north of the Holiday Inn. So it is one of the outlots that are adjacent to the Lowe's development. As Mr. Anier mentioned, the property is located in the Auburndale addition. The Auburndale addition has the Lowe's store, several outlots, and there is a ring road with a public access easement that creates the access for all of the stores and businesses along South 9th Street. So if you look at the aerial photo, what you'll see is that there is an entrance off of Schilling that goes along the east edge of all the outlots in which all those businesses have access. So there is no direct access off of 9th Street. And that takes us to this particular application. The Auburndale addition was platted originally in 1998 when it was annexed and rezoned. And in 2001, there was a planned commercial development amendment and a preliminary development plan amendment for the Lowe's site. And since that time, we have had a number of developments that have gone out there. So the property is Plan C3. The particular lot we're looking at today is Lot 6, specifically the north 101.83 feet of Lot 6. So there was a lot split that was created and to make a developable lot for what's being proposed today. And what's being proposed today is a Valvoline store that will be 1,462 square feet and have 2 service bays. Access will be accessed off of the Auburndale Ring Road that is directly east of this property. So vehicles will come in off of the Auburndale Ring Road, and there will be 2 service bays with stacking in which they can enter in. Those waiting lines, they'll get serviced and drive through. So the intent of the operation is that customers would stay in their vehicles the whole time, but they do have some off-street parking for vehicles for customers as well as for employees that we'll get to later. So the role of the Planning Commission in this case is to look at the submitted site plan, landscape plan, and building elevation drawings for the Valvoline Service Center and the commercial use, and review the plans to determine if they're compatible with the adjacent land uses and conform to the criteria of Attachment 7. And Attachment 7 is the criteria that we always use when we have a final development plan, and we have that as an attachment we can pull up on the screen later if people would like to reference it or have questions about it. Looking specifically at the site, the building is a little over 47 feet long, north to south, and a little over 30 feet deep, east to west, and there are 2 service bays within the building. And the site as it's proposed meets all lot coverage and building setback requirements. When we look at the site development data, we will see that the building is 1,462 square feet, and the parking and paving area, which is kind of the reddish brown color, pinkish brown color that you see on the screen, has a little over 12,000 square feet. Sidewalks are a little under 1,000 square feet, and the total green space area is almost 15,000 square feet. So that kind of gives you the breakdown of what the site looks like in terms of its different material characteristics. Elevation drawings. The primary architectural features are a brick wainscot masonry along the bottom that goes around the property, or around the building rather, with a vertical decorative column that's also constructed of brick with a masonry cap at the top. There's overhead garage doors that are glass, and the balance of the building is an EFIS product, which is like a synthetic stucco product that will have kind of a beigeish color. So this would be the front elevation or the west elevation facing 9th Street. The opposite side, which is going to be the east elevation, and we're calling the rear of the property, would face the Auburndale Ring Road towards Lowe's. And the south side of the building also has the brick masonry along the bottom wainscot, and then has the EFIS for the balance of the building there, and the north is the same way. And all 4 sides are proposed to have wall signs, but the details of the wall signs will be submitted as a separate submittal and building permit. So when you do your review, you're looking for the color and type of sign, and if you feel it is appropriate, we can then approve the signs administratively through a sign permit later on. So the off-street parking, automobile service centers are required to have 1 off-street parking space for every employee plus 2 off-street parking spaces per bay. This particular operation will have 2 service bays that are stacked north and south, so right next to each other, and will have up to 4 employees at any given time. What this means is that the site is required to have 8 off-street parking spaces, and right now the site plan shows 9 off-street parking spaces, with 1 of them being a van accessible handicap stall. In addition to the off-street parking spaces, there's also requirements for driving aisles and access. The site will be accessed from a 2-way driving aisle off of the ring road that will come along the south side of the property, and will also connect to the Dimery property to the north. There is a loading, unloading area off to the north side of the building where they can receive supplies from vehicles delivering materials for their operations. Landscaping, the site is required to have 2,856 square feet of landscape area along both the 9th Street side, which is the east side, and the Ring Road, which is the west side. And the plan proposes 3,874 square feet. They're required to have 6 tree units, and the plan is proposing 7. Along 9th Street, you have 9 ornamental trees and 13 shrubs, and then along the Ring Road, you have 3 shade trees. Signage, the outlots as part of the 2001 ordinance are limited to 1 pole sign not to exceed 120 square feet, and then wall face signs or wall signs on the face of the buildings that are subject to the C3 regulations. This particular site would be required or allowed to have 381 square feet. Right now, the plan proposes 4 wall signs, no freestanding signs that staff could identify, so no wall or no pole sign or no ground sign. And the 381 square feet is a large amount of signage, so we feel comfortable that the 4 signs that are being proposed could fit within that. And again, here's a kind of a re-look at the wall signs. So here would be the west frontage, here's the east frontage, the south frontage, and the north frontage. All the signs look basically the same, and I'm sure they have similar square footages. So our analysis, staff has determined that the proposed Valvoline plans demonstrate a satisfactory quality design and compatible with other developments and structures, and they conform to the criteria of attachment 7. And so what we would provide in terms of alternatives for the Planning Commission is to approve the proposed site development plan subject to whatever conditions you feel are reasonable. You could approve the proposed site development plan subject to certain revisions or corrections if you feel some are needed for the plan. You could deny the proposed site development plan, citing the reasons thereof if it's insufficient, and you can postpone consideration of the application if you believe that additional information is needed. If you determine that the site plan appears to comply with all C3 regulations and the requirements of attachment 7, we do have a number of recommendations, and specifically Recommendation 1 is one that you will not find in your staff report that I identified after the staff report went out, but I put in here, and it's a standard one that we use. Anytime we have a final development plan, we require that the applicant provide us with a document that's labeled as a final development plan and has all of the information that the Planning Commission reviews on one sheet. So that will have your property lines, it'll have your buildings and its dimensions, the driving aisles, the parking spaces, and the landscape areas and plantings all on one single sheet. And so that would be something that we would have as an item as far as a follow-up condition. And number 2 is that we would carry over the typical signage limitation that we have out for the Auburndale outlots. And number 3 is that runoff calculations for the runoff for the subdivision be reviewed or be submitted to be reviewed by the city engineer prior to issuance of a building permit. There is on-site detention. There's a detention pond for the entire Auburndale subdivision in which water can be directed to. There's underground pipes that can get to the pond, and so that's where the stormwater runoff is to be directed. Condition number 4 is that KDHE stormwater permit or notice of intent shall be required for this particular property, as well as a local land disturbance permit. Number 5 is that the project shall be completed in substantial conformance to the plans that you reviewed. And number 6 is that a building permit for this property or for this project shall be obtained within 18 months of the site plan approval. If you feel that additional information is needed and that this particular property is not ready to be approved, staff would recommend that you postpone with direction to the staff and applicant on what needs to change. I can't figure out why we have a blank, weird screen here. Okay. All right. With that, we will take any questions you might have.
Okay, thank you, Dustin. Commissioners, do you have any questions of staff?
I just had one. The recommendations, number 1, I don't know if it's just an extra word added in there, but I was a little confused of facade or wall signs for shall be subject.
Yeah, we have a poorly written words there.
Good.
So.
I thought I was losing my mind when I was reading through this before. Perfect. Other than that, it makes sense to me.
Very good. Thank you.
Any other questions of staff?
We would just note that there is a precedent from the Planning Commission on Salina Square and then the currently vacant Rib Crib that the Planning Commission approved ornamental trees along South 9th Street because we've had there's a pretty substantial overhead power line there, and we've tried to discourage shade trees and encourage ornamental trees so they don't conflict with the power lines along 9th Street. So that's why we like the shade trees to be over on the east side away from 9th Street, because if you had shade trees along 9th Street, they'd grow up into the power lines. So.
Thank you. Dustin, is there anyone online who may have a question or comment?
We do have the applicant's representatives online. I'm not sure if they have anything they'd like to share, but they are with us to share some thoughts if they have them.
Jeff Bates and Eddie Manzi with Bates and Associates. We're the civil team on this. Don't really have anything to add. It was a good presentation. Architects also on the line if you have any questions about the building.
Okay, thank you. All right, commissioners, any other questions of the applicant or staff? If not, I would entertain a motion for this.
Madam Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve application Z98-81 with the 6 recommended staff recommendations and 1 typographical error or text error.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Moved and second to approve this application with the 6 amendments and the typographical error. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Is that the final part?
Thank you.
The 5 grand? Okay.
So this is a final action of the planning commission and is not something that requires city commission approval. The other two items would go on to the city commission for their final decision.
Okay. All right. Is there any other unfinished business or other business?
It's the only thing I would note after reading the minutes. I kind of allowed that this was going to be my last planning commission meeting, but I was advised by Capers that it would be advisable for me to continue working until Friday, June 13th. So I'm going to work till Friday the 13th in June, so I will be with you for at least one additional meeting. So.
All right.
Does it look like we'll have anything for the 20th?
It does not look like we'll have anything filed, so we'll send out a formal cancellation, but we have no business that needs to come forward to you on the 20th, so we'll probably cancel that meeting. We do have an item filed for your June 3rd meeting, so we will have that. But May 20th, I think we'll send out a meeting cancellation notice, and we'll get that off with pay.
Okay.
Same pay you've been getting.
Okay.
So
All
no
right.
treats today.
We don't get no cookies now, do we?
No, you got no treats.
Come to the June 3rd meeting and we'll have some treats for you. There you go.
Okay, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and second to adjourn. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Thank you.